Hi everyone, it's Dr. Bosworth and I am live again on Sunday night. Welcome to my channel. I am happy to be here on Sunday nights, and I do live streams on Sunday nights to answer some questions in the keto world, but also to do things like sometimes give lessons on the most common questions, or in many ways connect with people who have been just starting the ketogenic diet, wonder what their doctor might say, and I give some of the answers that I tell my patients. So first of all, if you're new to my channel, I just want to say thank you for joining me. Welcome. The live casts have been, actually I want to see, Sunday Night Wisdom, I like that. I'm just making sure, again, my mic is this new mic, and I would love to see somebody give me a thumbs up that the sound is working. One night I got started and nobody could hear me, so I had to redo it. So when you do this alone, I get the importance of a producer. I would love to know where you're from too. I have a classroom now on YouTube, and it does seem mythical. You give this presentation to an empty room, but it's filled with incredible connections across the world. And I am a physician, an internal medicine physician. I take care of chronic health problems, and I started on this journey 2.5 years ago when I had learned a little bit about the ketogenic diet actually on a podcast. I had heard a man named Dom D'Agostino talk to Tim Ferriss, and I love the way that Tim Ferriss has a progressive forward look. He is known for biohacking, and I have patients like Tim Ferriss, so sometimes the only way I really understood what some of my patients were doing is if I had listened to the Tim Ferriss show that they had listened to. And it was an interview with somebody named Dom D'Agostino, who is a scientist, a PhD doctor, who studies ketones, and he was studying brains and how to help them work better. It is because of that initial podcast that I really dove into understanding the ketogenic diet. And it brings me to 3 years later. Last year, I was just about ready to push publish on this book, which took a lot of courage, standing outside the norm of medicine, saying, can I be one of the leaders of possibly understanding this, unpacking it from where it is, which is a lot of sciencey and molecular metabolism research, and then put it in a place where patients could understand it. The number one patient in this book was my mom, who was fighting cancer at 71 years old, and her journey became life or death. If I wouldn't have understood the ketogenic diet, she wouldn't be here, and I probably wouldn't be doing this either. So just a little story. The patient, my mother's name is affectionately called Grandma Rose in the story, and if you haven't read the book, it is the primary teaching tool to say, yes, a ketogenic diet really is I just want to say that really did say hello from Sioux Falls. Someone from my own community is watching this. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Hello. So I just wanted to recap the book a little bit and give an update, because Grandma Rose has recently had cancer invade her vision, and I was going to give an update to that because I've had a lot of people ask. So again, the book is my mother, 71 years old, typical American who had been overweight, but not terribly overweight, and then had been dealing with this cancer, had 2 or 3 rounds of chemotherapy before we started the ketogenic diet. And unfortunately, I was reading papers, like National Institute of Health papers, to figure out, is this ketogenic diet safe for my mom? And I could barely read as fast as I needed to keep up with answering the questions that we got one at a time. The sorting what is hocus pocus and what was actually science was not easy, because there was a lot of naysayers 2.5 years ago. And in the meantime, my mom couldn't afford for me to take 6 months sabbatical and go study it. I needed to figure it out as quickly as possible. And I'll tell you, that is where tonight's focus comes from. Is I'm going to show you the people that taught me, and I'm going to show a promotion for how much we need these evidence-based researchers and the kind of conferences that I'm going to talk about in a minute. Let me finish up with the update on Grandma Rose, though. So Grandma Rose, you go through this book, you'll find the basics to ketogenic in about every other chapter. As the book starts out, I'm pretty skeptical, and I tell a little bit about the research that I'm reading and some of the papers that made me say, okay, I think I can believe this. And then some of the other papers where I'm like, I don't think this has anything to do with human studies, and I don't think I can translate it to my mom. And then as the book goes on, we get a little lax in our ketogenic journey, kind of like most people do after they first start, and we have to get back on the bandwagon. How do we do that? We then go through a stint where she got a very serious complication because her 71-year-old body was acting more like a 100-year-old body. And as a physician taking care of aging patients, I could tell you this was destined to be a terrible outcome. And because of the ketogenic diet and some of the metabolism and the immune system augments that she was taking advantage of, she beat all the odds. I expected her to not do well because of the 20 years of taking care of patients. But we ended up, anyway, by the end of the book, she had fasted for over 40 days at one part where she was really sick. And by the end of the book, she is doing well without any chemotherapy at that time. But that was 2 years ago. So I pushed, it was actually about a year and a half ago. I pushed publish on the book about a year ago now, and it has changed so many people's lives. I feel like I have patients all over the world that I've educated through a book, and it is quite an amazing social experiment. So if you've read the book, I'd love you to give me a thumbs up or just let people know that your review of the book. If you haven't put one of those on Amazon review, I am an independent author, so the only way my book gets shared on Amazon is if there are positive and generous reviews. So for those of you that have done that, thank you very much. It is how the book has been so successful, so thank you. In recent days, Grandma Rose had her vision. She woke up one day with a very stabbing pain in her eye, and then her vision went from kind of fuzzy to almost black and white. This has led to a couple of injections into her eyeballs with steroids, and we've really ramped up her ketogenic diet, taking her back to what Dr. Seyfried would say is a press pulse that we would use in a cancer patient. And I do some blogs about that and some videos about that if you're curious about what that really means. But what I most want to talk about tonight is something called the Metabolic Health Conference. And the Metabolic Health Conference was something that I found after I'd heard this podcast of Dom D'Agostino and Tim Ferriss. I started I wanted to get closer to the bench of science, saying, I can't wait for a 10-year study. My mom is sitting right here, and I have a bridge in my education. Who can help me? And so I actually reached out to Dr. D'Agostino, and he invited me to this conference that he was having 2 years ago. The one 2 years ago was in Tampa, Florida, and I had already written some of the book. I was ready to, I was really looking for affirmation from somebody else who said, what I'm reading in these science papers, does it actually work in patients? So I was looking for my tribe. I was looking for people who needed evidence-based medicine and that were able to translate it into how could I use it in people today. And Dr. D'Agostino put together some of the most amazing teachers that you could ever have collected, and many of which I didn't know before the conference, but afterwards I went home and studied them. This is a picture of some of the people that are at this year's conference, which is happening at the end of this month. It'll be the 3rd annual one, and I would contend it is the best ketogenic conference out there. I could go through and name most of the people in this picture. I'm going to tell a couple of quick stories because I just think it's so fun to see, what happens in a conference and how, the number of times I get people saying, Doc, can you help my doctor? Can you teach my doctor? Or how do I find a doctor that understands a ketogenic diet? And I would contend it's been really hard to find the people on the front edge of a ketogenic education that isn't just using it in a hocus pocus kind of way, but actually using some science behind what they're doing. And I contend these are the giants that have led primary care physicians like me and others to be able to use it frontline so quickly. So a couple of ones I love to talk about. This is Adrienne Scheck, and she is a researcher who also looks at ketogenic diet in cancer animals, as well as using hyperbaric oxygen. But one of the highlights I learned about her, she lectured at that conference in Tampa Bay, Florida, 2 years ago. She actually takes high school students and brings them into her lab in an internship where they get to actually do some science that I have teenagers. I want to inspire them to do things that are meaningful and that have science in them that really do show how you can make a difference in the world. And just some of the cool things she does with the students in her lab inspired me. It reminds me of the things I do in my community, where I had taken students to Haiti to say, this is what it looks like to do medicine without all those fancy hospitals, and connecting to the patient is still that valuable. And, you know, when she talked about what she does in her lab and the rewards she gets for teaching students in high school how to run a protocol, how to use something evidence-based, how to set this up in a way that could translate into primary care clinics like mine, it gives me goosebumps to remember her story. So if you haven't heard of Adrienne Scheck, it's a great, just a woman pillar in her community. I think it's Phoenix, Arizona, that her lab is at. Amazing woman. But I didn't know about that woman until I went to this conference. And when I have gone to a few other conferences for keto, you'll find that if you want the giants in the ketogenic world, they're going to be here. They're going to be looking at the front lines saying, teach us what you've learned in the last year. Teach us what you've learned in the last 2 years. And I would contend that if you're curious about the ketogenic diet, most of the people that check into my channel, you can find keto and weight loss in lots of channels, but what I focus on is what other things should we be so excited about when it comes to a ketogenic diet. And some of those are the brain health, which is, again, one of the things that attracted me to Dom D'Agostino. He's on this picture too, I think. I don't see him on this picture. He's like the head guy, though. He's the one running he's the leader and the MC, and he's the one who studied the Navy SEALs, works with NASA, and works with brain performance in humans using things like, hey, we should study to see if exogenous ketones are beneficial for cognition. And I walked into his conference saying, no, I think those people are all out to sell something, and they're not, there's no evidence behind that. And the truth was, I hadn't seen those papers yet. Despite trying to find answers, it was places like this where I got to sit in a conference saying, oh my goodness, they have studied this. Here's where they've studied it. Here's the population size. And then I get to use that information to translate and say, did it fit my patients? So the other thing that I would encourage you to do is, if you've never been to a conference for metabolic health, this is the one to go to. It is at the end of the month, and I'll go through a couple of things. It's in Los Angeles. It starts on the 31st, and it goes through Sunday the 3rd. And each day is filled with not just presentations from scientists, but also patients and their journeys. There's a couple of patients that I've followed over the years. If you haven't heard of Andrew Scarborough, I didn't know his story before I went 2 years ago. And Andrew Scarborough was a nutritionist who was 22 or 23 years old, and he had just graduated with either a master's or a PhD. It was in Europe, so I'm not sure if the years added up for the same label here in America. But he had one of the highest degrees in nutrition and had never studied what a ketone was in his advanced nutrition training. And here he was on a train, and suddenly he had a grand mal seizure. The next thing you know, he's having a brain tumor removed from his body, and it's a glioblastoma. And one of the first places that cancer has really been looked at was glioblastomas, which have an incredible quick death rate, and how responsive they are to a low sugar, low carbohydrate, high fat diet, especially when you do the things that Thomas Seyfried said. I'm going to make sure I point out him too. He's actually another person that I quote in my book, and I did reach out to him. I connected to him through this conference, and I had read his major textbook on the metabolic theory of cancer. I'm getting that title wrong, but he's a giant. He's out of Boston College, and he gave one of the most inspiring lectures saying, no, you can't believe what we see on the front lines, and here's how they're doing it, and here's the protocol, and this is what they're doing. And I would have never known that had we not had this conference. So, he's another one of my heroes. Eric Westman is another person I've met at several of the other keto conferences as well, but I first met him at this conference, the Metabolic Health Summit. And he was an internal medicine physician like me. He was at Duke. He was really focused in on weight loss and metabolism, and he was, years down his journey for using ketosis as a way to help patients lose weight. But much like most physicians, they didn't have a voice. They didn't have other people saying, well, have we studied that? Have we studied that? And Eric Westman is one of the scientists who's put forth so much of the effort to get those first few studies done, because nobody would fund them. If you haven't been on a ketogenic diet yet, you'll see that it's quite economical, and there's not any medications that you need to be on. So there goes a sponsor from Big Pharma. And so it's people like Eric Westman that did the first of trials saying, here's what we saw with the diabetic patients that used a ketogenic diet. So let's go back. I just want to point out this website, the metabolichealthsummit.com. And this is a code that when you go to book the conference, if you type in DR Bosworth, MHS, standing for Metabolic Health Summit, you'll get 15% off. This is not a commission that I make. I'm just super excited that this summit is happening, so I reached out to say, is there any way I can help? And they said, yes, there is. Help us promote it. We'd like to sell out. We know that if a conference is sold out and the funds going back to supporting the research on the front lines, you can't help but be not just motivated to be the scientist, but also the funding that comes from a successful conference like this is it's invaluable. A couple things I like to point out. I wanted to make sure I said this on there. It's not just for medical professionals. Now, it's the kind of evidence-based science that I will get medical credit for continuing medical education as I attend this summit, and that's really important to me. I've searched and kind of weeded out to say the only place I want to spend my continuing medical education hours the last 2 years has been in the metabolic health world. Getting a conference that's evidence-based, all in one place, that's not an online course, this is the first I've seen. I think there has been one that I missed, but this has continuing medical education points because it is that advanced and it is that accredited. They're partnered with Cedars-Sinai Hospital right there in Long Beach, south of Los Angeles. But it's not just for medical professionals. These are the stories of the patients who have lost weight. These are the leaders in the ketogenic world who've said, you know what, after some of that research from Dom D'Agostino, we started using that research to get those tools in the hands of patients. And amazingly, it doesn't require FDA approval. Some of these chemicals have been on the market for a long period of time. We just didn't know that they had the benefits they did. So again, if you use this code, you will get 15% off. It is not a commission to me, but I do want to be as helpful to them as possible. I said that I hoped they were sold out after this podcast tonight, because the other thing that they're asking me to do is that there is a VIP. There's a VIP mixer. When you go online, you'll see that. But there's also a fundraiser for 2 organizations that I send patients to all the time. And I want to make sure that I get to that. Let's go to, we're going to go here. And then this is one of the foundations called the Charlie Foundation. Actually, shoot. Well, that's not going to work. I'll have to do that differently next time. I'll just tell you what they are. One of them is the Charlie Foundation. That is an organization where they focus on childhood seizures and using the ketogenic diet to help kids with seizures. This is one of my go-to places whenever someone calls me or reaches out to me and says, is it safe in kids? And I'm like, just go to the Charlie Foundation and look at what their organization has done, not only in the research of a ketogenic diet, but for children with seizures and how much evidence-based medication or evidence-based research they've put into the brain development and the brain repair that happens in childhood seizures. And the Charlie Foundation has just been a pillar of a leader, just a giant of a leader in that space. The other organization that's very near and dear to me is the Max Love organization. And again, Max Love has to do with kids with cancer. When I look at my mom, 71 years old, she had cancer, and that cancer is now invading her eye. Her eye has dead cancer cells floating in it, and it's kind of stuck in the eyeball, and it's affecting her vision. But what that's called a complication from having cancer and having chemotherapy, or it's not from chemotherapy, it's actually from the cancer. And you look at the kids who now, 85% of children who have cancer are going to survive. And what happens is they get chronic illnesses from the tax their body goes through when they've had cancer. And the Max Love organization is all about raising up the quality of life and the sustainable lives that can happen in children who survive cancer or children with cancer. And boy, they have become a voice and an advocate for the ketogenic diet because of its anti-inflammatory effects, because of their ability to look at how do you repair a system quickly, how do you grow and repair, that atrophy of muscle after a chemotherapy or after cancer treatment. The Max Love organization. So both of these organizations are what all of the fundraisers are going to go towards at this Metabolic Health Summit for the gala the night, I believe it's on Thursday night, might be Friday night. I got to look at the schedule again. Either way, one of the benefits of this summit was that in the mixer right before that, I get to do some interviews of all of the superstars here in who are attending the ketogenic Metabolic Health Summit. So one of my asks for you is, as I am so excited to be someone who is just ready to promote this this conference. Again, it is I have counted down for it. It is the one where I would scrape, borrow, and beg to get the resources to be able to go to it, or to have I asked my mom to watch the kids while my husband and I are at this conference, because it is my #1 of a year. This is where I want to make sure I never miss. So to get to go to that and then be asked to interview, or at least to get some snippets from all of the people who are speaking at the conference, is a super generous gift. And one thing I'm missing in order to be prepared for that is that I have a tool that I would like to use, and it's on Instagram. The Instagram would be a way that you could follow this Metabolic Health Summit while I'm there, and getting clips to say, if you were looking at, if you were able to talk to 100,000 patients saying, what is it about the ketogenic diet that you think they should know? I'm going to use those kinds of questions to say, let's bridge from the bench scientists to the audience that needs to hear about the ketogenic diet, and not in some whimsical way, but these are your researchers, these are the bench scientists who hold the secrets, so that doctors like me and doctors like my colleagues can say, all right, just give me the science. My goal is to help people without hurting them. And so I do need evidence to show me, where is this coming from and how can I apply it? So the tool that I need for this health conference, which is at the end of this month, is if on Instagram you have 10,000 followers, you get this really cool tool that would make it easy for me to promote these videos out to the world. So I only have like 3,000 followers on my Instagram page. So I would like you to go to Instagram and look for DRBOZ. There's an underscore and then my name, Annette Bosworth, MD. But DRBOZ, you're going to find me. You're going to find a picture of me there. Again, I don't have a lot of followers on Instagram, and the only way you get this tool is to get to 10,000 followers. So I am going to shamelessly ask you to follow me on Instagram so that I can use that tool when I'm at this conference. Again, it just makes it really easy for all the videos that I do live to be spread on the Instagram posts, and I don't have that, and you can't buy it. You have to get followers to get that. So I am asking for you to do that. Just a couple of other housekeeping things. I launched something on Friday night that, if you didn't see it, I have a new playlist that I am repurposing. About November of this past year, I had an overwhelming popularity for the four or 5 weeks before this event happened. And I had someone reach out to me and ask me if I would consult them. We decided to do this live on her Facebook page, and the live posts were something I did and kind of didn't think about again, but they have become very popular. So I am trying to improve the recording, or at least clean up some of the parts that kind of, we just did our very best on those first recordings. So I have just launched the first of those interviews. I have 8 more to come, and I'm telling you, they are the best. If you're on a ketogenic journey and you are looking for, what do I tell my patients when they have a stall? What do I tell my patients when they aren't losing weight? And how do we get through that? What are the evidence-based rules that I apply to patients? And I go through that with this patient. So if you haven't subscribed, you're going to want to do that and ring that little bell, because that's how you'll hear when I put out the posts, put out those videos. I do write an article about each one of these, just kind of summarizing what I talked about and putting any resources into those. And you can find that on my website, bosmd.com. If you haven't signed up for those, that email list, I'll try to put an email out every time I put up a post too. Again, I'm getting a little better at all this, so for those of you that have been following me all along, hopefully you see a rapid and sustainable learning curve to not just how to YouTube, but also communicate. How do you communicate with an audience where lots of people are at different stages of the journey? If you're at a beginning stage, I will tell you again, this is my favorite teaching tool. These are the love notes that I wrote my mom. When she was sick, I was taking her little lessons of what she could handle and what she could learn. I taught her in person, and then thanks to the nudging of my husband over and over again, he said, you should put that in a book. You should put that in the book. So thank you for telling me to do that, and I finally listened. So again, I'm signing off. I am improving health one ketone at a time. So if you'd like to continue following me, make sure you subscribe, push that little button, and go to Instagram and become my follower, even if it's just for the month, so that I can get this tool. All right, thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll check out your posts and answer your questions when I get through with this. Oopsie, wrong button.